Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Brad Cromes. I am Portage County Treasurer. It's my pleasure today to be able to talk to you a little bit about what the Treasurer's Office does, as well as property taxes more generally and tax breaks that are available to folks in our community through Portage County. So just some things to get into here quickly. What do I do as county treasurer? This is something that people ask frequently. Often I get confused for the county auditor and vice versa. They are in fact different jobs. One thing I'd like to note though is that it is certainly not this scene here. I have two small children at home. This is a movie that we have watched with some frequency together. It's Disney's Robin Hood. And this is the Sheriff of Nottingham. And I am not in fact running around banging on people's boots to get coins out of them. That is fortunately not the work of the county treasurer. What we do are these things. There are three main duties that we have. The first and most familiar to most folks is that we're the county's tax collector for property tax purposes. We're responsible for around $230 million every year in tax collections, most of which is real estate. We also do some with mobile homes. There's personal property and inheritance taxes still in the state of Ohio, as well as a number of other smaller things, cigarette licenses. You see on there fines, fees, assessments by local governments. But the vast bulk of what we do is tax collection. So that's the thing most people know us for. You get 2 bills a year from us typically, and then that's the work. We're also the county's chief investment officer. There's a pool of what we call inactive funds, which are the monies that don't have to go immediately out the door to fund your schools, police, fire, roads, bridges. That money we can hold and invest, and the idea there is that by investing, we're generating investment income that then keeps the tax burden lower than it might otherwise be without that investment income generation. Our portfolio at the moment is actually a little higher than the $110 million that I've got listed here. That's largely because we've had an infusion of federal monies that have kind of offset some of our things, so that's pretty high at this point, but our focus is always on safety first. It is public money, so if we lose public money, that's bad news. We're not investing in anything risky like FTX, which is our recently bankrupted cryptocurrency firm or anything of that nature. It's all very safe agency securities, treasury bonds, that kind of thing. We also want to be able to make that cash money if we need to do something for government, so liquidity is our next thing, and then return is kind of our last emphasis. So generating revenue is important, but it's not the most important. It's something I think it's important and distinct from other investment worlds. What we do with our public funds. And then the third leg of our stool is that we're the county's banker. So we are responsible for safekeeping. Once we have money in the county coffers, we're the ones who actually make sure that the bank balances are sufficient to meet the needs of the county. We do that in conjunction with the county auditor's office. So that's a place where we work very closely together. There's checks and balances there. The commissioners actually are the ones who typically, or commissioners' departments are encumbering money. The auditor is issuing the checks, and then we are the ones who are, making sure that there's money there to cover those checks. So all told, Portage County is around $1 billion entity. It's a thing that I don't think most people know or think of, but when we talk about the revenue that we collect and also pass through grants and things from the federal government, it's a pretty significant concern. So those three things are the main thing that we do as county treasurer. There are some other duties that come along in that work as well. The land bank is an important one. It was created in 2012 by statute in Ohio, and what the land bank does is takes properties that are tax delinquent, vacant, abandoned, blights on the community, and gives us a tool to deal with or correct the deficiency, whether that's tearing down a blighted abandoned structure or taking a property through tax foreclosure and then getting it to a new owner. The land bank facilitates that work. I sit on the board by statute as the treasurer. I happen to be the chair of the land bank. That is true in most counties that have a land bank. The county treasurer is usually the chair because we do so much of the work associated with moving a property through. And that's been a very successful effort over the years. We've had state grant money that's come through, federal money via the state. So it's been a real vehicle for improving our communities here in Portage County. And you may have seen some of those around in various places. If you have questions, by the way, at any point, please feel free to interrupt me. Otherwise, I'm just going to talk for half an hour. So that's the land bank piece, which is kind of another statutory element. I'm on a number of statutory boards and commissions. The Board of Revision, which is where we look at property tax values, which are set by the auditor. If people feel that those are unfair, they can challenge them at the Board of Revision. So I'm on that with the auditor and a commissioner or commissioner's representative. The Budget Commission is the auditor, treasurer, and prosecutor, and that entity makes sure that every community in Portage County, every taxing district has the funds that they say that they have to spend the money they say they want to spend. So that's an important check as well. Data processing board is another one that ensures that all of our electronic stuff can talk to all of our other electronic stuff, so that we're not using anything incompatible. And that group is significantly bigger than the other two, but some other things there. And then there's extra statutory stuff that we do. So, as a public official, I'm a member of a number of statewide entities, the County Treasurers Association of Ohio, of which I serve as vice president right now, or as treasurer right now. I'll be second vice president as of next week. I'm vice president of Northeast Ohio Treasurer Association. I'm on a number of other community boards that do work in this space. So that's there to illustrate that county officials do other things outside of that work. Often it is because they are a county official, though, that they're engaged in it. So that's some of that stuff. So that's a lot about me and my office, but I think it's important groundwork to lay so you know what's going on. So where does the treasurer fit into county government? I'd mentioned before that we work really closely with the auditor's office on the financial aspects of what we do. That is true. This is the traditional model I'm about to show you that's in the Ohio Revised Code. So you've got a flow here of different roles within the government. The treasurer is at the top because we're the best, and we are the tax collection entity, so we get the tax money. As I mentioned before, the auditor is responsible for spending the tax money. That is on the basis of encumbrances from our commissioners, who are at the bottom here. You see that I have listed there the county administrator and the finance director. In counties that have an administrator, as Portage County now does, that person is often responsible for day-to-day operations of the county. So a lot of the day in, day out minutia of what makes county government work flows through that person. Ideally, a board of commissioners is just a decision-making board and kind of a budgeting board, and they're setting policy and then letting staff run the show. So administrator is that role. The finance director, similarly, once a budget is set, they're responsible for gathering budget proposals from county offices, submitting them to the commissioners, and then making sure that they are being followed and that sort of thing. So important roles under the commissioners that are worth mentioning. And then, as I'd mentioned before, the Budget Commission, which is the prosecutor, auditor, and treasurer, again, is there to make sure that, in fact, we have the money to do what we say we're trying to do. So kind of how this illustrates a little bit the balance of power and how we check and balance each other. This, I'd mentioned again, is the statutory model. There are others in the state. There are two counties that operate under charters as charter counties. They are Cuyahoga and Summit, so they are our neighbors. They are a little different in that they have an elected county council and an elected county executive. So those are different pieces of the puzzle. In Summit County, they elect their fiscal officer, who serves multiples of these roles. The fiscal officer is a combined treasurer, auditor, and recorder. And in Cuyahoga County, those duties are not elected officials, they are appointed. So I mention that only to say this isn't the only way that it can happen. This is how it happens in the vast majority of counties in the state, but that's kind of how we fit into how that works. So where the money comes from, I think we all wish it rained dollar bills, but it does not. So it comes from our taxpayers. There are a number of different ways in which we as local governments generate revenue from taxpayers. Property taxes, as mentioned, are the main one that we deal with as the treasurer. Sales and use taxes are another. So if you are checking out at the Target, you're going to be charged an extra 7.25% in Portage County. A portion of that flows back here to the county and helps fund what we do, and that's mostly what the discretionary budget that the commissioners set and use is sales and use tax. Income taxes are another revenue stream. They're probably people's least favorite for some reason, but that's mostly federal and state. We are, for the most part, as local governments, not collecting income taxes. There are some exceptions in school districts who have passed one via a levy or a ballot initiative, but for the most part, those are state and federal revenues. And then user fees, you see I've got the turnpike there from when it was first constructed, but turnpikes are a good example of that. If you have a park that charges admission in your community, if you've got a public pool, all of those are examples of user fees. Dog licenses would fall into that category. So things that you're paying a fee for service, that's another one of the revenue streams that we've got there. And as I mentioned, we're in box one there with property taxes. So now we get to how that works, property tax basics, right? So just as a little background, they're the oldest form of taxation in the state of Ohio. We have been collecting them here since 1825. So we have some practice and experience with doing this. They're chargeable by all local subdivisions. Counties can do it. Municipalities like your cities can, townships, school districts, libraries, park districts. Pretty much everybody who does tax-based work is going to be able to do property taxes. And they are levied against property itself. Real property like land and houses, and personal property in some cases still like cars, boats, business inventories. The personal property tax rate in the state of Ohio right now is 0. So we still have one, it's just 0%. So at some juncture, the state legislature could decide to again institute a personal property tax. We have exactly one case left that we're collecting a personal property tax on. So it's been some time since we've had one, but just the distinction there. And as I had mentioned before, largest source of revenue for most local governments. On your property tax bill that you get from me, I think it's important to note that we collect for all taxing entities. So the vast majority of most people's property taxes is their school district. Most school districts are around 55 to 70% of your tax bill, depending on where you live and what your community's kind of constellation of taxation is. But just as a frame of reference, when you're writing that big ugly check to me, most of it is going to fund your school district. And they are ad valorem, which is our fancy Latin phrase for value-based taxing. So it's not based on ability to pay, it's not based on actual consumption, it's based on the value of the underlying property. And they are expressed as millage, which when you see a ballot issue, it's usually 8 mills, something, expressed as, dollars per $100,000 evaluation. That is a very old kind of mechanism, but it's a base component there. And then there's 2 basic components of property taxes in Portage County. You have what's called inside millage or non-voted millage, and a voted millage. When you see a levy on your ballot, that's voted millage. There are 10 mills of inside millage that we get in Ohio to divide among local governments. So, the county gets a piece of that, your city gets a piece of it, your townships, those are all negotiated. We just recently redid our negotiation of what the split of that inside millage is in the county. And again, we currently have a 10-year plan for how that's split, which is good. But that is usually a very small part of your overall tax burden, but there is some that is not voted via the Ohio Constitution. So something a lot of people don't know, not every bit of taxation is voted. There is some that we get as local government. Just for existing. Pros and cons of property taxes. The pro is that they are reliable and stable as a revenue stream. So for delivering service, you want to be able to know I'm going to have X dollars coming in to do the work I've got to do. Property value is pretty stable as far as those things are concerned. Recent housing market fluctuations to the contrary notwithstanding. And the cons, you're taxing land. And value. So we're not at all thinking about capacity to pay. And that really comes back to hurt folks who are less capable of doing so, seniors on a fixed income. We have some mechanisms to deal with that. There could be more that we could do, but that's one of the pitfalls there that we've got to wrestle with. So how property taxes are calculated? This is the math that gets us to what your tax bill is. So we look at the fair market value of your property as determined by the auditor times 35%, and that is your assessed value. So in our example here, I've got a home in Kent with a fair market value of $200,000. The assessed value is 35% of that, so we're assessing taxes on $70,000. And again, that's all set by Ohio Revised Code. So then we take your assessed value by your mill rate and divide by 1,000 because a mill is a tenth of a penny, and that gets our gross tax. So here again, we've got our home in Kent with $70,000 of assessed value. You've got a base rate of your 10 mills for inside millage, 60 mills of school taxes. I'd mentioned 60%-ish is school taxes, 30 mills of road taxes. So you've got 100 mills for the sake of this example. Using the formula then, you've got a base property tax that's owed for the year on that property of $7,000. So we then take that gross tax and multiply it by reduction factors to get a credit. Reduction factors are the way that the state tax commissioner adjusts property value to reflect variations from place to place within the state. So here we've got our state tax commissioner determining that the residential factor in Kent is 0.48 and change. And that is from an actual assessment from reduction factor from a couple of years ago. So the credit then is 33.80.10, and then we take the gross tax minus the credit to get your adjusted tax. So you subtract 33.80.10 from 7,000. You've got an adjusted tax of 36.19.90 that is owed. There are 2 slides that deal with this math, just so you know. So it's somewhat complicated. So you got your adjusted tax by your rollback reduction equals the total rollback. There are several of those in the state. Owner-occupied houses is the biggest one. And as I'd mentioned, this was an example of a residential, which is most of us. So you qualify for a 12.5% rollback of your taxes under Ohio law. That's $452. So we subtract that out from your adjusted tax, and that gets us finally to the net amount that you owe. So on our $200,000 house in Kent that owed $7,000 in raw taxes, we do the math and we end up at $3167.41 is the bill for the year. So you see that there are a lot of reductions built in to the taxation system before we even get to specific tax reduction programming. So then we take that base amount, we add in whatever special assessments are there and delinquencies that may be owed. So if you haven't paid your taxes, we're going to tack on a penalty and you're still going to owe us those back taxes. So that's going to be part of it. Special assessments come from other taxing subdivisions. So popular ones among subdivisions are recycling fees. If you haven't mowed your lawn, your city is going to mow your lawn and then charge you for it via a special assessment often. So that's what those are. And that gets us to your total amount that is owed. So here again, and we're just walking through how property taxes are calculated. So, in this case, I said for the sake of argument, this person has a stormwater management fee of $50, snow removal for $50, and recycling for $50. They also missed their tax payment from last year, owe some back taxes, etc. So we add all that in, and then the tax bill with all of that stuff you see here can be adjusted significantly upwards. So your base amount was $3167. If you add a bunch of a bunch of delinquencies and penalties in, almost doubled it. So this is $5191.75 here. And again, this is all just to illustrate kind of how the math flows. And then that's what you owed. So your billed. Any questions about that? I know that was a lot, very quickly of the process. So. You are billed twice a year typically. First half and second half, we bill in January and July. If you pay your taxes in January, you don't owe us a July bill typically, but that's kind of how that goes. We also have a program, and I'm going to hit this in a minute, but it's our prepay program. So you can divide your taxes into monthly chunks, which is much easier for most people to deal with. Most other bills are charged monthly. And so if you're used to paying monthly, that might be an easier way to do it. It's a smaller check to write, less painful, hopefully, over time to do that. If you happen to miss one of those payments, the other thing that's nice is there's no penalty for that. You just owe us what you were going to owe us when the bill would have otherwise been due. So it's really flexible. We have about 2,200 people in Portage County who do that. More should. It's really useful. I've done it in the past, but
you're saying that if you pay monthly and you miss a month, there's no penalty that will get you down the road for being late for it.
Right. As long as you make the payment when it's actually due.
Okay.
There's no penalty for missing the monthly installment. So
okay.
It's a good program. And again, it helps people kind of divide that up. So I mentioned the prepay program there. We also have delinquent payment contracts, which are a little different. If you happen to be in the case of delinquency, you should call our office. Those can be monthly also. Those ones, there are penalties attached for missing. But I share that to say that there's some flexibility in how we bill. And then additional considerations, this is the reductions part. So you came in at a good moment. There are a number of things that can come into play when we calculate property taxes, including reduction programs over and above the rollbacks you might be eligible for. The biggest ones that people should know about are the owner occupancy reduction. Everybody who is in their primary residence in the state of Ohio gets a 2.5% reduction, is owed a 2.5% reduction for their primary residence. That typically happens at transfer. So when you buy your house, you usually are getting that. Your realtor is usually helping to take care of that for you. It does not always happen at transfer. So if you don't know whether or not you're getting your 2.5% owner occupancy reduction, you should call the auditor's office and ask. That's a off the top savings that people should be getting if they are in a primary residence. So I mention that because a lot of people don't know that that's the case. And we want to make sure we're catching everybody because that's, free money essentially. And then there's a couple others, agricultural use valuation. So typically, if you were using your property for an agricultural use, our code is set up to give you a tax break for that. It's weighed against residential taxes. It's complicated. There's a formula based on any number of different things that we won't get into. But the base of that is that you have to have at least 10 acres of agricultural land producing some income over the prior 3 years, and then that can get you into the CAUV program, which again can be a savings mechanism. And then the homestead exemption, which is the one most people know about. If you're over 65 years of age and or have disabilities, you can potentially exempt up to $25,000 of the value of your home from taxes. So it's just a haircut on the valuation on that first part of the math. That is the best place to get one, frankly. It's the best one you can get. It is income-based now. There was a period of about 4 years from 2006 to 2010 when every senior qualified for the homestead exemption in the state. That went away some time ago, but people still think that when they hit 65, they get it. Unfortunately, that is not the case, so it's income limited. The income, I think, is $30,000. That's actually the 35 or in that neighborhood, 30 to 35. I forget off the top of my head what that number is. But if you were a senior citizen on a fixed income, potentially that's another savings for you there. So this is what your tax rate sheet looks like. The auditor and I publish this annually. It changes year to year based on the number of levies that are rolling on or off for you in a specific tax district. This is really tiny, I know, but just so you know what that looks like, it's on our website. And then the other one here is our property tax bill. This is a screen grab of my property tax bill explainer that is on the county treasurer's website. If you don't know what any of these boxes mean, because there's a lot of information that we pack onto the front of that form, this can help unpack that. I think the part that's most useful, let's see, does this have a little zapper on it? It does, is this one right here. Yeah. It's on the left column there, the pie chart. That's the breakdown of where my taxes go. So it gives you kind of an outflow of, how much is going to your schools, how much is for parks, how much is for children's services, et cetera. And it's a good thing to know because you want to be educated about where your money's going and the value you're getting back from it. So this is Lil Kev. You may remember this ad from a couple years ago. Where does your tax money go? What are we dropping dimes on in Portage County? And the answer is a bunch of stuff. So I'm going to click through these really quickly, but you can see there that we have women's, infants, and children, EMA, the jail, water and sewer. Your Portage County Board of Elections is funded through taxation. So I share this only to illustrate there's a lot of value that we get out of the dollars that are collected on our behalf by local government. Most of the work that happens that most people realize, most people's interactions with governments are coming from your local governments, whether that's your school district, police and fire services, driving down the road and hitting a pothole, any of that stuff. That's all government stuff, and it all is funded by taxes. So I know most of us know this, but having it visually presented as it's actually quite a bit of stuff that we're getting, I think maybe helps that tax bill hurt just a little bit less. So the rest of this is kind of what we've worked on since I have been treasurer. I'll go through these quickly. I have been the treasurer since 2015. So we've worked really hard on modernizing our office. We have more payment streams available for folks to pay taxes than ever before. You can pay with a credit or a debit card. You can pay online. You can pay over the phone. You can do the NFC thing or the wave your device at the reader and it takes the money out thing. So we have any number of options for folks in that space. We have done this financial wellness fair, which is an outcropping of the work that we do with local banks. We are in a position to know a number of the players in this space, and I think it's incumbent on us then to serve as a convener to have these conversations about how people can manage their finances more effectively. So we've really worked on that. This walks through kind of some of that in detail, but it's been an extreme pleasure of mine to serve as the treasurer. I really enjoy the work that I do. I get to meet a lot of interesting people, and most importantly, I get to help folks. I think that public service is all about that, and most of us who are doing this work are doing it because we want to be useful and give back to our communities. The treasurer's office is not one that people often think of as being positioned to do that, but we're a pocketbook entity, and at the end of the day, if someone is in a moment of financial difficulty, helping them navigate that is a real responsibility and something that we take seriously and an opportunity to be useful. So we're happy about that. Things that we have done this year, because this is what's most relevant, right? What have you done for me lately? That I just want to share with you. In January, we started a program with Ravenna High School. It's called the Day Institute. It's where their senior honors government students come to county government and they spend 2 weeks at a number of different stops. I think they have 6 all told. Us, the recorder, the mayor's office, a couple of others, but they're getting a crash course in local government. This is about building the next generations of citizens and civic leaders. We're really excited about how that's gone so far. And we're slated to start our next crop in January, so it's coming up again. Really excited about that program. We had our lowest delinquency rate that we have records for in March. So I want to point that out. A lot of money is floating around right now through various entities to help people pay their property taxes. We have a program with the Community Action Council that's still in existence for that, to help people kind of work through, and that's all related to the pandemic. But that's been a really great thing. That program is called the Tax Relief Program. It's been live since May. We initially had a piece with Job and Family Services too that has ended, but the one that most people qualify for is with Community Action. That's, and just to make clear, they are able to pay up to $10,000 of taxes for most Portage County residents. That one is income limited. It's tied to the median income of the county with the highest median income in the state of Ohio. It's Delaware County, just for those who are looking for the trivia at home. But that ends up being something like $150,000, $175,000. Most everybody in Portage County is going to be qualified in some way for that. So it's gone well. They have a wait list now, but if that's something that could be useful for you, something to think about potentially. In June, we launched our GrowLink program, which we're excited about. So this is a link deposit program. We are putting $2 million, up to $2 million of our investment portfolio that I mentioned into local banks. And for that, then, those local banks are making $2 million of lending available for property improvements for homes, so energy efficiency improvements, for small business growth and development, and for family farming supports. So those programs are a first come, first served basis. The money goes in when people pull out a loan, so we're not funding anything in advance and letting it sit there, which I really like. That's a new mechanism for us. It's modeled on some state of Ohio stuff, but that's been live since June. There's something else I wanted to say about that, but it's a great opportunity. So if that's something that you think might be of value to you, the value in it is what I was going to get to, and it's a reduction in the loan amount. So as interest rates are spiking all over the place for everything right now, this is going to be increasingly valuable to people. You can get up to 3% off of the cost of the loan for the first 5 years of a loan under that program. So really something that, again, as the rates continue to escalate, that could be good for folks, and we're excited to see where that goes over the next year or so. So that is an option. So if you're interested in that, please call our office. Our second half tax collection was good. I got a chance to go to Columbus and attend some extra training through the John Glenn College of Public Affairs, which is where I have my master's from, so mentioning that. And then today, we are conducting our 6th annual Financial Wellness Fair. So this is our, as I said, 6th one. We have done versions that are in person. We have done versions that are online. This year, we are doing a fully in-person version that will then also be fully online. So it's really kind of grown significantly. If you're watching this later, you're getting the online version, so I want to say thank you for doing that and checking it out. There will be plenty of other opportunities, so look at the other classes too. But this is a real passion project of mine and something that I think is really good for us and will continue to grow. So this is the Property Tax Relief Program. I already mentioned it. We're close to the end of our time, so I'll just click through here. It was with JFS and with Community Action. The JFS program sunsetted in August, so we just have Community Action left. And again, there is still some money there that most everybody is eligible for. And then the GrowLink program I just talked through significantly as well, and I'm clicking through these quickly. This stuff is all on our Portage County Treasurer's website, so don't feel like you have to read it here. You can find it later. If you're not a web person, you can call me, and I'll be glad to talk through this stuff with you and see if any of it is a fit for you as well. So that is that. 2023, we're going to be working on continuing to improve the office. Again, I'll click through these quickly because we're at the end of our time. But making sure that we're providing our employees with a good place to work, making sure that we're doing as much outreach to the public about the work we do as possible, and trying to get good information in people's hands so they can make informed decisions about their plans to pay their taxes and what we can do to help them. So with that, I got a little bit of time. Do you have any questions for me while I'm here? Or?
Are they ever going to do anything for seniors paying school tax?
Well, the way we fund schools in Ohio is a mess, so that's a good question. We do have the homestead exemption. That helps a little bit. So if you think you might be eligible, call the auditor on that one. The tax relief program I'd mentioned with Community Action Council is open to seniors and does have a senior preference. So if you're 55 plus, that's how they define senior in that program. You get a little bit of an extra nudge on eligibility, but yeah, I mean, it's a that is an ongoing problem that the state of Ohio needs to address. And until we get there, I'm trying to be as creative as possible with other county leaders about finding ways to help. So good, excellent question.
I haven't had kids in school for 40 years,
Yeah, I
you
understand.
know.
I understand. Okay, well, with that, then we are at our time. So I want to thank you for attending. I want to thank everybody for watching, and hopefully you have found this valuable and find more from the Financial Wellness Fair to help you meet your personal financial needs as well. Thanks very much.